A Boeing 737 lists for $121 million. That's not what owning one costs, not even close. Over its lifetime, a single narrow-body will cost 3 to 4 times its purchase price. A $55 million aircraft ends up costing $350 to $450 million to own and operate over 20 years. And after all of that, the airline makes about $7 per passenger, not 7%. $7. So where does the rest go? And who's actually making money from the plane? Start with the purchase. The 737 MAX 8 lists at $121 million. Nobody pays that. Large airlines negotiate 40 to 60% discounts. Real price, $50 to $70 million. Still tens of millions per aircraft. And airlines don't need one, they need hundreds, so they borrow, typically 70 to 80% debt. On a $60 million aircraft, interest alone adds $10 to $15 million over the loan. Before the plane carries a single passenger, it already costs more than the sticker price. Then it starts losing value. 3 to 5% every year. A $60 million aircraft is worth about $30 million after 10 years. That loss isn't theoretical. It's real value disappearing. Every year. Most people assume the purchase is the hard part. It isn't. The purchase is just the entry fee. What comes next is where the real cost lives, and almost nobody outside the industry ever sees it. The plane costs money every day. It exists, even when it doesn't fly. Commercial aircraft run on a maintenance schedule most passengers have never heard of. 4 levels. The first 2 are routine. The third starts to hurt. Every 18 to 24 months, a C-check. Panels removed, systems inspected. Wiring checked floor to ceiling. Cost, $1 to $1.5 million per aircraft. But the C-check is not the one that keeps finance teams awake. The D-check is. Every 6 years, the aircraft is stripped to its frame. Every seat out, every panel off. Engines removed and sent away for overhaul. 35,000 to 50,000 man-hours of labor, grounded for over a month. Cost, $4 to $6 million. And when it's done, the plane isn't better, it isn't upgraded, it's just certified to keep flying. $5 million to end up exactly where you started, every 6 years, for the life of the aircraft without exception. Now add engines, each overhaul, $2 to $4 million, every few thousand flight cycles. A short-haul aircraft doing 8 flights a day burns through those cycles fast. The engine is never paid off. It just keeps billing. This is the part of the business that broke Swissair. Not empty seats, not bad routes. The fixed cost structure that runs whether the planes do or not. One of the most respected airlines in the world. Liquidated in 2002. The machine kept charging. The revenue stopped. That was enough. So airlines do something that tells you everything about this business. They set aside hundreds of thousands of dollars per month per aircraft, not for repairs that have happened, for repairs that haven't happened yet. The liability is always ahead of you, never behind, and that's before it leaves the ground. Now it has to fly. Fuel runs 20 to 30% of total operating costs. And it moves. In 2008, oil hit $147 a barrel. Airlines that hadn't locked in fuel prices were paying double what they'd budgeted. Several went bankrupt that year, not from empty seats, not from bad routes, from fuel prices alone. But here's what most people don't know. Fuel is no longer the biggest cost. Labor is. Pilots, crew, ground staff, now the single largest expense for most U.S. carriers. More than fuel. Over a third of total operating costs. Most people still think fuel is number one. It hasn't been for years. Then come the fees. Landing charges, gate rental, navigation, ground handling, $2,000 to $4,000 per flight. Before a single passenger moves. Every flight is already in a hole before wheels up, so the plane has to keep moving. Airlines target 10 to 14 hours of use every single day out of every narrow body. At 6 hours, it's bleeding money. At 0 hours, it's a catastrophe, which is exactly what happened. During COVID, utilization collapsed. Aircraft were parked in the desert. Victorville, Marana, Teruel. Revenue went to zero. The maintenance reserves kept accruing. The loan payments didn't pause. The depreciation didn't pause. The ownership costs didn't stop, not for a single day. That's not a crisis with a beginning and an end. That's what this business looks like when the music stops. And here's the number that puts all of it together. Purchase and financing, $69 million. Maintenance over 20 years, $60 to $80 million. Insurance, $8 to $12 million. Before fuel, before crew, before a single airport fee. That's already $130 to $160 million. On a plane that cost $55 million, add fuel over 20 years, $120 to $160 million. Add labor, fees, ground handling, $80 to $120 million. Total lifetime cost of one Boeing 737, owned outright, operated for 20 years, $350 to $450 million. For a plane that listed at $121 million. The ownership cost is nearly 4 times the purchase price. This is why airlines go bankrupt. Not because planes don't fill, because the machine never stops charging, across hundreds of aircraft, running constantly, through recessions, pandemics, oil spikes, air traffic slowdowns, it just runs. Now here's what nobody tells you. Someone looked at every number you just heard. The D-checks, the engine overhauls, the fuel exposure, the $7 margin, and decided that wasn't the problem. That was the opportunity. They built one of the most profitable businesses in aviation, without flying a single passenger. AerCap owns around 1,700 commercial aircraft, doesn't operate any of them, buys from Boeing and Airbus at negotiated volume prices, often better than the airlines get, then leases those aircraft back to airlines, $400,000 to $1 million per month, per plane. AerCap's net profit margin in 2023, approximately 20%. The global airline industry's average net margin, 2 to 4%. The lessor makes 20%. The airline makes 3%. Same plane. The airline absorbs every risk aviation can produce. Fuel spikes, labor disputes, weather, pandemics. The lessor has one exposure. Do airlines still need planes? For the last 50 years, the answer has almost always been yes. And when it wasn't, when COVID grounded entire fleets and airlines begged for relief, some lessors offered deferrals, others didn't. The lease was a legal obligation. The airline couldn't pay. The lessor took the plane back. The obligation existed whether the aircraft flew or not. That's not a flaw in the model. That's the model. Mature carriers with strong balance sheets, Delta, Ryanair, own most of their fleets. Because over 2 decades, ownership is cheaper. You stop paying the lessor's margin. That margin stays on your balance sheet instead. But most airlines can't wait 2 decades. They need aircraft now, they need flexibility, they need the capital elsewhere. So they lease and pay the margin every month for years, which means for every flight you've taken on a leased aircraft, and statistically, most flights are, there was a company you never heard of collecting rent on the plane while the airline dealt with everything else. A Boeing 737 lists for $121 million. By the time it retires, it has cost up to $450 million. The airline took all the risk, ran every flight, absorbed every spike, every strike, every mechanical delay, made $7 per passenger. The lessor held the contract, stayed invisible, made 20%. The logo on the tail belongs to the airline. The plane belongs to someone in Dublin. Next, what happens when that structure breaks? Russia, 2022. Western lessors trying to recover more than 500 aircraft stranded inside the country after the invasion of Ukraine. Planes they legally owned, airlines that refused to return them, insurers that wouldn't pay. A legal battle worth billions. Still running today. Subscribe if you want that one.